Diane Keaton died on October 11, 2025, and Hollywood was shocked. People who knew her, worked with her, and made films quickly paid respect to her, calling her one of the last true originals. But when Warren Beatty finally spoke, everyone stopped what they were doing. There was sadness in the tone, but there was also something else. Something that made people think of a story they had never heard the whole of. After more than 50 years, they met again. Keaton was fresh off of The Godfather, and Beatty was already a Hollywood star. It started out as a simple link between two growing stars, but it would affect both of their lives for decades, through work, friendship, and private times they never talked about in public. Now that the music business has lost one of its most unique sounds, Beatty's reflection has shown the world how deeply two lives can still be linked, even after being apart for so long. It was early, a long time ago. In the early 1970s, Hollywood seemed to be changing from the inside out. There were fewer and fewer studios, more independent voices, and a new group of actors who were starting to change what it meant to be a star. Warren Beatty was one of them. After Bonnie and Clyde and Shampoo, it was already a big deal in pop culture. Diane Keaton was rising quickly. He was known for his drive, charm, and almost obsessed dedication to telling stories all over town. Her unique mix of vulnerability and wit had people interested in her, and people started to call her one of the most unique artists of her time after The Godfather. They met in that swirl of change. They were both young and interested, and they were drawn to each other's energy. It was hard to stay away from Beatty, who was 10 years older than her. Keaton refused to be just another fan, because she was unstable and scared. Friends later said that the first time they talked, it was like two equals were arguing. He was the type of person who had to check everything twice. She was a free person who went with the flow. They were going to orbit each other no matter what. Their relationship started in private, away from press conferences and cameras. While Keaton had never been interested in Hollywood parties, Beatty's intelligence and the inconsistencies that lay beneath his public persona caught his attention. He was both thoughtful and restless at the same time. A thinker stuck in the face of a leading man. He laughed because of her. He pushed her to be more disciplined. Despite their chemistry, neither of them thought they would last. Both of them were busy with work. Both are wary of attachment and are too independent to fit into someone else's life. Even though the union was short by Hollywood standards, it left a mark that would last for decades. People who knew Keaton well said she still admired Beatty even after their relationship ended. They said she thought he was incredibly smart and a perfectionist who never gave up. Beatty, for his part, said she was one of the few people who could really understand how creative he was. Later, in interviews, he talked about how they didn't see their early conversations as flirting but as the start of a conversation that never really stopped. By the mid-1970s, their lives were no longer the same. Beatty was working on new projects and managing his growing fame as an actor and director. Keaton was about to hit a sweet spot that would make her play it again. She became famous for her parts as Sam and Annie Hall. Even though they didn't show up together very often, their names were often said together. Two pioneers who changed the tone of current American films. From what we can tell now, that first meeting was the start of a long creative trail between them. Even when they didn't work together for years, their respect for each other never went away. Beatty said that Keaton had a trait that you couldn't control. Keaton later said that she liked how intense he was because he wanted everything to have a meaning. Those words set the stage for the relationship they would have for the rest of their lives. Not love that lasts through time, but respect that comes from knowing each other. In a business where memories are short, theirs lasted. It seemed like both names were always brought up when people talked about the cultural energy of the 1970s. They were strong when they were apart. Together, they gave hints about what can happen when two strong spirits see themselves in each other. They were only together for a short time. Still, those months were heavy with the weight of two lives that were going too fast. Diane Keaton was getting used to her newfound fame after The Godfather. Hollywood rumors about their relationship went around, while Warren Beatty was already living the fast-paced life of fame. Neither of them seemed interested in admitting or denying anything. What they had going on between them wasn't for show. It was private, thoughtful, and different from anything they had ever done or seen before. People often call Bay a perfectionist and a womanizer, but he found something surprising in Keaton. The way he was known didn't impress her. She made fun of him, pushed him, and often asked him why he did what he did. Friends remembered that she was the only one who could cut him off in the middle of a long explanation without making him lose respect. Bay stood for Keaton, a mix of genius and a restlessness she understood. They both wanted to make things, but neither of them wanted love to break them. Their relationship grew over time, with long meals where they talked about politics, art, and performance. Sometimes it was so quiet in the morning that it seemed like the world had stopped, and there were times when one or both of them were working on something else. They didn't say anything important. They just knew that they were both artists looking for the same meaning in life, and that was what brought them together. People who knew them back then say they broke up without being angry. Keaton knew what was most important to her. She liked her job, needed to be on her own, and didn't want to be a supporting player in anyone's story, not even his. As for Bay, he thought it was brave of her to leave. He once said that she was honest in a way that made you think about how you acted. There was a kind of power that lasts long after a relationship ends. Keaton had already started filming Play It Again by the time they parted ways. Sam and later Sleeper with Woody Allen, which made her the face of a new age in films. They are smart, goofy, and very human. At the same time, Bay was working on his own goals by producing and acting in the film Shampoo and Heaven Can Wait. They learned how to be brave, find the truth, and keep art at the center of their lives from that short link. Each success showed what they had learned. Even when they were apart, they still had signs of that early understanding. Bay once said that Keaton listened in a unique way, which seemed to describe the quiet focus she brought to everything she did. Years later, Keaton said she admired his sense of what would happen and his view that every choice had an effect. When they said those things decades apart, it was clear that they both remembered how the other had changed them. They would keep running into each other in strange ways. Award shows, hanging out with friends, and small talk that hinted at a story that wasn't finished. But what lasted wasn't love or memories, but understanding. They both knew the rare truth about the other. Fame, with all its noise, wasn't worth it compared to the search for truth. Both of them were at the top of their fields by the end of the decade. No longer shaped by that short-lived romance, but always by it. The love never went away. It just changed shape. You can hear it in Beatty's later thoughts. The kind of respect that's almost like love. The love that didn't need to be said. Keaton thought of a time when everything seemed possible when he was in her life. When two wild souls met, they left a mark that neither could erase. Diane Keaton and Warren Beatty were both famous by the end of the 1970s, but in very different ways. She made unusual charm an art form, winning Annie Hall's heart and showing that being real could change what it means to be beautiful on screen. At this point, Bay was working on his biggest project yet. He was a movie star and a powerful director. Reds is a huge historical drama about love, politics, and having faith. Bay thought of Keaton when it was time to choose the lead female character. They hadn't been together in years, but the movie he wanted to make fit something about her. Reds would be different from anything they had done before. Bay had to be in charge of every scene because she was directing, co-writing, producing, and starring. Keaton, who was cast as journalist Louise Bryant, went into a hard-working production that tried her endurance and patience. Movies were shot in London, Helsinki, and New York over the course of more than a year. Long hours, endless changes, and Bay's exact instructions could have broken up any teamwork. Instead, it made theirs stronger. Later, crew members talked about an unsaid agreement they had with each other. Keaton would often nod before Beatty finished a sentence when he gave a note. He changed the camera instead of her act when she was having trouble with a scene. Their past together had built a bond that isn't often seen in these situations. The right to disagree without getting angry. As one cinematographer put it, they worked like they'd already won every battle. It was very exciting. Keaton was nominated for an Academy Award for her role as Louise Bryant, and reviewers said that the chemistry between her and Beatty was real and not forced. Off-screen, they didn't talk about what it meant. For Beatty, the movie was the best example of what he thought movies could do, bring together thought and feeling. Keaton saw it as proof that being weak and being determined could coexist. Through the other, they had found the right mix between chaos and order. But Red's experience went beyond making films. Friends saw that they were treating each other differently now than they were years ago. A quiet respect had taken the place of the fun of youth. Keaton once told me that Bay's careful attention to detail taught me how to be patient. Bay turned said that her bravery kept the movie on track when it looked like it was going too far. They didn't need love to make their bond stronger anymore. They had art. When Reds came out in 1981, it got great reviews and cemented Beatty's status as one of Hollywood's most daring directors. But for people who knew both of them, it was more than that. A get-together that ended one story and began a new one. Working together brought them back together as friends, and it would last longer than the movie's praise. Even though they went in different directions in their personal lives, they always respected each other as artists. In interviews later, Bay didn't talk about Keaton very much. However, his tone became kinder when he did. He said she was brave, dedicated, and a big part of why the movie worked. As Keaton did, she thought about Reds as one of the hardest and best times of her life. She said the project made her remember why she loved telling stories. Not to get famous, but to tell the truth about people. Something more basic was going on behind all the accomplishments. Two artists who had a short relationship in the past meet up again. Not out of love, but because they had a reason to. Reds didn't just get back together with their friend. It was rethought, giving them both a way to say what they had always known without using words. For them to really work together, it took trust, respect, and hard work. Following years, Reds, Diane Keaton, and Warren Beatty all went their separate ways, but they were never too far away from each other. The films in Hollywood had changed again. In the 1970s, film was more experimental. Now, it was the franchise age, and both actors became more picky about the projects they took on. With a lot of private history. When reporters used both of their names in the same line, there was no awkwardness. Instead, there was love and pride between them. People who knew them well talked about a bond that wasn't based on memories, but on respect. Their shared past didn't bother them, and they didn't dwell on it either. They just carried it. Bay often said that Keaton was one of the few people who could question his ideas without being arrogant. Keaton once said that Bay never stopped taking the work seriously. A comment that showed respect instead of criticism. In a field that often forgot what honesty meant, they helped each other remember what it looked like. Over time, their friendship turned into something rare, straightforward honesty. They called each other sometimes, said notes, and always checked in on each other's work. When Keaton republished her book in 2011, she talked about a lot of the people who had helped her along the way. But Beatty's disappearance was only noticed because it was important. She chose to keep what they talked about secret, even after many years had passed. It wasn't a secret. It was an honor. To be fair, Buddy never turned their past into a story for the press. The press talked about other relationships he had as a young man, but their friendship with Keaton was left alone. His friends said that he smiled before speaking when her name came up. That quiet, small move said more than words could. It could have been because Keaton reminded him of a time in his life when he was both ambitious and honest. It could have been because she never treated him like the myth he had become. In the early 2000s, they were both seen as elder statesmen in the business. They were respected, thought about, and aware of how quickly times change. Younger artists went to them for advice, but neither of them was proud of how much they helped. When people asked Keaton about her peers, she often said that Beatty was one of the people she looked up to the most. He replied that she was one of the most important people of her age. Their public words were short, but they held decades of history together. There were no planned get-togethers to get attention. Interviews to repeat their story out of nostalgia. Their friendship lasted because they both knew what it was like to be famous, to be under a lot of pressure, and to feel empty after the applause stops. What brought them together wasn't who they used to be, but what they still saw in each other. Truthfulness in a business that makes money off of lies. In a town where everything is new, their loyalty stuck out through marriages, awards, and changes in what people liked. The thread that had held Bay and Keaton together since their first talks in the 1970s was never lost. It wasn't about being together all the time for them. Friendship meant a lasting bond. The kind where nothing needs to be said, because everyone already gets it. On October 11, 2025, when word got out that Diane Keaton had died, the business world responded as if a light had gone out. Within hours, tributes were all over social media. Actors talked about how warm she was, directors talked about how unique she was, and fans talked about scenes that had changed their lives. One pause felt heavier than the others during the whole thing. Warren Beatty, who is known for being very clear with his words, didn't say anything for days. Some people were not sure if he would talk at all. When he finally did, he said something short, but each word held the weight of 50 years. He called her a unique artist, which sounds like an easy phrase, but has a lot of meaning for people who know their story. He talked about how curious she was, how brave she was to not copy others, and how she had a knack for finding humor in the truth. Following a short pause, he admitted that some people will always be missed. That one line, simple and quiet, said what years of guessing couldn't. It showed a loss that wasn't about a coworker or a past flame, but about someone whose presence had changed the way he thought about art and life. People who knew him well said that the days after she died were a time of unusual reflection. Bay, who was in his late 80s, had lived long enough to see friends die off from different groups. But Keaton's absence seemed to go further. He would always remember her as a link to his youth, to new experiences, and to the time when they were both still brave enough to think films could change the world. Losing her meant losing the person who had been with him through the best times of that time. He allegedly went back to Red soon after hearing the news. Friends said that he watched the last scene twice and stopped at the look they shared before the credits. It wasn't back in the day. Yes, it was praise. Having faith that what was caught on film all those years ago was real. The way they showed trust in each other. Even when there was quiet, the way she listened showed what kind of person they were together. In the weeks after she died, Bay stayed away from public events and talked to a few people alone who had worked with both of them. He thanked a Reds crew member for helping us get into the right flow. He wrote to someone else, "She made everything better." Small actions like these were typical of the man, who had always kept his feelings inside. But there was no way to protect the heart this time. Later, a reporter asked Bay about Keaton's impact, and he spoke slowly. "She told us that being honest can look classy. It might have been the best way to describe what she had done with her life." being able to make the truth feel beautiful without making it less harsh. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. After that, there was silence, which had its own meaning. Bay had been the one who was always talking about big plans and dreams during the years they knew each other. People thought of Keaton as impulsive and self-reflective, but when she wasn't there, he seemed smaller in the best way, humbled by what she had given him by just being herself. People who know him well say that he now talks about her in the same gentle way he talks about family, with thanks instead of sadness. Her death completed a loop that began 50 years ago, when two ambitious young artists met in Hollywood as it was changing quickly. Warren Beatty doesn't just think of Diane Keaton as a co-worker or a friend when he remembers her. He is going back to the part of himself that first learned what it meant to be honest. As he talks about her life, he tells everyone that some connections don't go away over time. Their depths only grow in silence. Warren Beatty's thoughts on Diane Keaton's death don't really feel like a tribute in the end. They feel more like a warning. Hollywood forgets about its past a lot of the time. Still, some stories wouldn't go away. Theirs started when they were young, lived on through art, and stayed strong through quiet friendship long after the cameras stopped rolling. Keaton's life showed that being unique could last longer than what's in style. And Beatty's words proved it. He didn't talk like a hero talking to someone else. He talked like a man talking to someone who had once been like him in his search for meaning. Together, they created an age based on honesty and risk, making films that are still watched by people who have never met them, but feel their impact everywhere. When Beatty's name is next to hers now, it doesn't mean rumors or romance. It stands for something more uncommon. The friendship between two artists who met when things were brand new and never gave up on each other. That bond has become its own memory for those who have seen them grow, work together, and get old. An award or an obituary can't capture it. Check out this for more sad stories.